We're taught that mercy is rewarded with gratitude, that kindness begets kindness, that saving a life means you've made an ally. But when you heal the wrong creature in the dead of night, you learn a truth far more dangerous. Some debts cannot be repaid, only collected. They call it the healer's curse in the old stories. Save a wolf, and the pack remembers. Save an alpha, and they never forget. I learned this lesson at dawn, when I opened my cottage door to find them waiting. 100 wolves, silent as snow, their eyes like copper coins catching the first light, and at the center of them all, the dying man I'd pulled from the river, no longer dying, no longer quite a man. He'd come to claim what I'd taken from him when I stitched his wounds closed, his death, or perhaps something far worse. Chapter 1. The Woman Who Couldn't Heal Herself. My grandmother used to say I had healing hands but a broken heart, and she wasn't wrong about either. The sickness had taken everything from me 5 years ago, not my life, but my womb, my fertility, my future. In a world where wolf shifters ruled and human women were valued primarily for their ability to bear strong children, I'd become worthless overnight. My betrothed had severed our engagement with a single cold letter. My family had stopped mentioning grandchildren. Even the village healer who'd trained me had suggested gently that perhaps I should focus on other pursuits. So I'd retreated here, to my grandmother's cottage at the edge of Thornwood Forest, where the human settlements ended and wolf territory began. I gathered herbs that most people feared to harvest. I treated illnesses that proper healers wouldn't touch. I lived alone, because alone was all I'd ever be. The cottage suited me, small, practical, surrounded by my medicinal garden. Wolfsbane grew beside yarrow. Nightshade crept along the fence posts. I'd learned to make poisons as well as cures, though I'd never used the former. Knowledge was protection in a world where humans had so little power. It was the wolves howling that woke me that night, not the distant howls I'd grown accustomed to, those haunting songs that echoed through the forest at dusk. These were close, desperate, pain-filled in a way that made my healer's instincts flare even through my sleepy haze. I should have ignored them. Every sensible bone in my body screamed to bar the door, to stuff cotton in my ears, to let whatever was happening in the forest remain the forest's business. But I'd never been good at sensible. I pulled on my cloak, grabbed my healing satchel, and followed the sound to the river. The moon was full enough to see by, painting everything in shades of silver and shadow. The Thornwood River ran fast here, swollen with autumn rains, and at first I saw nothing but rushing water and smooth stones. Then I saw the blood. It stained the rocks black in the moonlight, a trail leading to where a man lay half submerged in the shallows, his body twisted at angles that made my stomach clench. Even from a distance, I could see the grievous wound's claw marks that had torn through his chest, a gash across his throat that bubbled with each labored breath. He was dying. Minutes away from death, perhaps less. And he was beautiful. I hated that I noticed. Hated that even as I splashed into the freezing water, my hands already reaching for him, some part of my mind registered the sharp lines of his face, the silver-shot black hair plastered to his skull, the massive frame that spoke of a warrior's strength. His eyes opened as I touched him, wolf gold, burning with an intensity that should have been impossible for someone so close to death. "Don't," he rasped, blood bubbling at his lips. "Let me die." The words shocked me into stillness. In 5 years of healing work, I'd never heard anyone beg for death. They begged for life, for mercy, for one more day. Never this. "I can help you," I said, already assessing the wounds. Deep, but not impossible. The throat wound was the worst. If I could stop the bleeding, apply the right poultices, keep infection at bay. His hand shot out, faster than any dying man should move, and gripped my wrist with crushing force. "Healer," he growled, and I realized he could smell it on me, the herbs, the medicines, the trace of magic that all true healers carried. "If you save me, you doom yourself." "That's for me to decide," I said, and began to work. I'd treated wolf shifters before, though never one this powerful. His body fought my ministrations even as it craved them, trying to heal and failing, the wounds too severe for even supernatural regeneration. I used everything in my satchel: crushed yarrow to stop the bleeding, honey and golden seal paste for the deep lacerations, a tincture of willow bark and poppy for the pain that must have been excruciating. He lost consciousness halfway through, which made the work easier. I could focus on the wounds instead of those burning gold eyes that seemed to see straight through me. It took hours. By the time I'd stitched the last wound closed and wrapped his chest in clean bandages, the moon had set, and the sky was beginning to pale with approaching dawn. My hands were stained red to the elbows. My cloak was ruined. I was shaking with exhaustion and cold. But he was breathing steadily now, the color returning to his lips. He would live. I should have left him there. Should have gathered my supplies and hurried home before anyone discovered what I'd done. Shifter politics were brutal and complicated, and a wounded alpha because I knew that's what he had to be. With that much power rolling off him, even unconscious meant someone had tried to kill him. Someone who wouldn't appreciate a human interfering. But I couldn't leave him on the rocks to catch fever. Couldn't abandon my patient before I knew he was truly stable. So I did the second foolish thing that night. I dragged him home. He was massive, easily twice my weight, and the quarter-mile back to my cottage nearly killed me. I used fallen branches as a makeshift travois, pulling him inch by agonizing inch up the forest path. By the time I'd gotten him through my door and onto my bed, my only bed, I could barely stand. I collapsed in my grandmother's rocking chair by the hearth, too tired to even remove my blood-stained dress. Sleep took me like drowning. I woke to birdsong and the golden light of mid-morning streaming through my window. Every muscle in my body screamed in protest as I sat up, yesterday's work making itself known in spectacular fashion. The man was still asleep in my bed, his chest rising and falling in the deep rhythm of healing rest. In the daylight, I could see more clearly what I'd saved. He wasn't just beautiful, he was dangerous. Scars crisscrossed his visible skin, the marks of 100 battles. His hands, relaxed in sleep, were a warrior's hands, calloused and strong. I needed to check his wounds, change the bandages, assess for infection. But first, I needed to not smell like a slaughterhouse. I slipped outside to the pump, washed my hands and face with cold water that shocked the last of the sleep from my system. My garden was peaceful in the morning light, bees already working the late-season flowers. Everything normal. Everything safe. When I turned back toward the cottage, I saw them. Paw prints. Massive paw prints, far larger than any natural wolf, pressed deep into the soft earth around my home. Dozens of them. Circling the cottage like a siege line. They'd been here while I slept, watching, waiting. My hands started to shake again. But this time not from exhaustion. The man in my bed wasn't just any alpha. And someone knew exactly where to find him. Chapter 2, The Beast in My Bed. I stood frozen by the pump, staring at those massive paw prints, my mind racing through impossible calculations. The prints were fresh made within the last few hours, while dawn broke, and I slept exhausted in my chair. They circled the cottage completely, some so close to the walls that whoever made them could have looked through my windows. They'd watched me sleep, watched him sleep, and they'd done nothing. That terrified me more than an attack would have. I forced my legs to move, to carry me back inside, where I barred the door with shaking hands. Foolish if they'd wanted to break in. A wooden bar wouldn't stop them. But the illusion of safety was all I had left. The man hadn't moved. I approached the bed cautiously, studying him in the full light of day. The wounds I'd treated looked better than they had any right to, already beginning to close, the edges knitting together with the accelerated healing of his kind. But the bruising had darkened, spreading across his chest and throat in shades of purple and black that spoke of internal damage I couldn't see, couldn't stitch. I needed to change the bandages, check for fever. Needed to do my job, even as every instinct screamed at me to wake him up and demand answers. Who are you? Who did this to you? And why did 100 wolves surround my home while you lay helpless in my bed? My hands were steady as I began unwrapping the bandages, years of training overriding fear. The throat wound looked clean. No signs of infection. The chest lacerations were deeper, would scar heavily even with shifter healing, but they'd hold. I applied fresh poultices, the sharp scent of golden seal filling the small cottage. His eyes opened without warning. One moment I was focused on my work. The next, those burning gold eyes were fixed on my face with an intensity that stole my breath. Up close, they were even more unsettling, flecked with bronze and amber, ancient and knowing in a way that made me feel transparent. You should have let me die, he said, his voice rough but stronger than it had been by the river. Not the rasping whisper of a dying man, but the low growl of a predator reassessing its circumstances. So you said. I didn't let my hands falter. continued wrapping fresh bandages around his chest. I ignored you then. I'm ignoring you now. Do you know what you've done? There was something almost like pain in his voice, beneath the anger. What you've set in motion. I saved a life. I tied off the bandage, perhaps more firmly than necessary. That's what healers do. I'm not just a life. He tried to sit up, and I pushed him back down with one hand on his shoulder, shocking us both. You didn't touch an alpha like that. Didn't presume. But I'd had my hands inside his chest cavity last night. Propriety seemed absurd now. You're a patient, I said firmly. And you're going to tear your stitches if you don't lie still. He stared at me like I was a puzzle he couldn't solve. You don't know who I am. I know you're an alpha. I know someone tried to kill you. And I know that 100 wolves surrounded my cottage at dawn and then left without attacking. I met his gaze steadily, refusing to show fear even as my heart hammered against my ribs. So why don't you tell me the rest? A long silence stretched between us. Outside, a crow called, harsh and mocking. The morning light slanted through my window, illuminating dust motes in the bloody water bowl beside the bed. My name is Damian Blackwood, he said finally. Alpha King of the Northern Territories. And the wolves you saw weren't here to attack you, healer. They were here to bear witness. The name hit me like a physical blow. Everyone knew the Blackwood name, the most powerful wolf clan in 5 territories, rulers of the North for 300 years. Brutal, unforgiving. The kind of power that crushed humans without a second thought. I'd saved the Alpha King. The Alpha King. Witness to what? My voice came out steadier than I felt. To the debt. He watched me carefully, gauging my reaction. You saved my life when I asked for death. In doing so, you bought something I cannot give back, my oath. Witnessed by my pack. I owe you a life debt, healer. And there is no greater bond in wolf law. I don't want a debt. The words came out sharper than I intended. I don't want anything from you. You can leave as soon as you're strong enough to walk, and we'll both forget this happened. His laugh was bitter, painful sounding. You think it works that way? You think I can simply walk away? He gestured at his wounds. These were given to me by my own beta, my second in command, who I trusted with my life. He staged a challenge during the full moon hunt, violated every law of succession to strike when my back was turned. Do you know why? I shook my head, unable to speak. Because I refused to execute a human village that couldn't pay their protection tribute. Because I suggested we find another way. Show mercy instead of strength. His eyes burned into mine. He called me weak. Said I'd forgotten what it meant to be alpha. And half my council agreed with him. The implications crashed over me. A king betrayed by his own people for showing mercy to humans. A king who'd asked for death rather than return to face that betrayal. The life debt changes everything, Damian continued, his voice dropping lower. It means I cannot rest until I've repaid what you've given me. It means every wolf who witnessed your scent on me, your healing in my blood, knows that the Alpha King is bound to a human woman, living alone, with no pack to protect her. I don't need protection. You do now. He pushed himself up despite my protest, swinging his legs over the side of the bed with a grimace. By saving me, you've painted a target on yourself. Every wolf who wants to control me will come for you. Every enemy who wants to see me fall will use you as a weapon. And he stood, swaying slightly, and I found myself reaching out to steady him despite everything. I cannot let that happen. The debt won't allow it. His skin was fever hot under my hands, his chest still bandaged with my work. This close, I could smell him pine and smoke, and something wild that made my pulse quicken traitorously. What are you saying? I asked, though I already knew. Already felt the trap closing around us both. I'm saying you're coming with me. His hand covered mine where it rested on his arm, gentle despite the command in his voice. Back to Blackwood Keep, where I can protect you properly. Where the life debt can be observed and… No. I pulled away, putting distance between us. Absolutely not. I'm not leaving my home. I'm not going to live in some fortress full of wolves who hate humans. They'll kill you if you stay here alone. Then let them try. The words burst out of me. 5 years of suppressed rage finally breaking free. You think I don't know what I am to your kind? I'm Baron. King Damian. Infertile. I survived a sickness that left me unable to bear children, which means I'm worthless by shifter standards. Even my own betrothed couldn't get away from me fast enough. So forgive me if I don't want to go live among wolves who'll see me as either a weakness to exploit or a joke to mock. The silence that followed was absolute. Damien stared at me, something unreadable moving behind those gold eyes. When he spoke again, his voice was soft, almost gentle, and somehow that was worse than anger would have been. "Is that what you think?" he asked. "That your worth is measured in children you might bear? Isn't it?" I laughed, but it came out broken. "In your world? In any world?" He moved before I could react, crossing the small space between us with speed that shouldn't have been possible for someone so injured. His hands framed my face, forcing me to meet his gaze. "Listen to me carefully, healer," he said, and there was something fierce in his expression. Something that made my breath catch. "You are the woman who walked into a river at midnight to save a dying stranger, who worked for hours with hands that must have ached, who dragged a man twice your size through the forest because you couldn't leave a patient to suffer. You did this knowing I was a wolf, knowing the danger, knowing you'd get nothing in return but trouble." His thumbs brushed my cheekbones, and I hated that I leaned into the touch. "That makes you the bravest person I've met in 200 years, he said quietly. "And if the world can't see that, then the world is blind." I wanted to believe him. Gods, how I wanted to believe him. But I'd learned years ago that pretty words from powerful men were just another kind of cage. "You need to rest," I said, stepping back, rebuilding my walls. "And I need to check the perimeter, make sure whoever made those tracks isn't coming back. We'll discuss your life debt and your protection and your fortress later, when you're not half dead on your feet." He looked like he wanted to argue, but a wave of dizziness visibly passed through him. The blood loss, the trauma, the stress of standing, it was all catching up. "Later," he agreed, letting me guide him back to the bed. "But healer." "Olivia," I said. "My name is Olivia. Olivia." He caught my hand as I turned away, his grip weak but insistent. "The wolves will come back. Maybe not today, but soon. And when they do, I need you to promise me something." "What?" "Don't try to heal your way out of it." His eyes locked on mine. "Some wounds are meant to bleed." Then he was asleep again, leaving me alone with those cryptic words, and the growing certainty that saving Damien Blackwood's life had been the beginning of something I couldn't heal, couldn't fix, couldn't escape. Outside, the crows were gathering in the trees, watching, waiting, just like the wolves had been. Chapter 3. The Language of Scars. He slept for 2 days. I kept vigil, changing bandages, forcing broth between his lips when fever dreams made him restless. The wounds were healing faster than any humans would, but slower than they should for a shifter of his power. Something was wrong, poison, perhaps, or silver worked into the blade that had carved him open. I searched my grandmother's old journals, looking for answers in recipes I'd never needed before. Wolfsbane antidote. Silver draw poultice. Treatments for wounds that refused to close because they'd been made with malice, not just violence. On the second night, I applied a paste of activated charcoal and blessed thistle to his chest wounds, whispering the old words my grandmother had taught me, half prayer, half command. The infection that had been spreading like dark roots under his skin began to recede. His eyes opened in the lamplight. "You're singing," he said, his voice rough with disuse. I froze, realizing I'd been humming without thought an old healing song, wordless and ancient. "It helps the medicine work. My mother used to sing that song." Something vulnerable crossed his face, there, and gone. 200 years ago, before the war with the Eastern Pax. I'd forgotten it existed. I didn't know what to say to that. Didn't know how to reconcile this man, this creature who'd lived for centuries, who'd known my grandmother's grandmother's time with the patient in my bed who looked at me like I was performing miracles. "The fever's broken," I said instead, focusing on what I could measure and treat. "But you're still weak. Whatever they used on you, it wasn't meant to give you a clean death. No." He pushed himself up slowly, accepting the water I offered. "It was meant to be slow, painful, public. Victor wanted the pack to watch me die, to see what happens to alphas who forget their place. Victor. Your beta. Former beta." The words came out cold as winter. "By now he'll have claimed my throne, told whatever story suits him. That I abandoned my duties. That I went feral. He stopped, jaw clenching. It doesn't matter. The pack will believe what they want to believe. I sat in the rocking chair, studying him in the lamplight. You asked me to let you die. By the river. Why? He was quiet for a long moment, staring at his hands, those scarred, dangerous hands that had somehow been gentle when they touched my face. Because I was tired, he said finally. Tired of the politics, the posturing, the constant battles to hold territory and power. Tired of watching my people choose fear over compassion, violence over wisdom. Tired of being the monster they needed me to be. His eyes met mine, and because in that moment, bleeding out in the river, I felt something I hadn't felt in decades. What? Peace. The word hung between us, stark and honest. Outside, an owl called Hunter's song in the darkness. But you didn't get peace, I said softly. You got me, and my meddling, and a life debt you never wanted. No. He swung his legs over the side of the bed, moving carefully but with growing strength. I got something far more dangerous than peace, Olivia. I got a reason to go back. The way he said my name sent heat down my spine, intimate, possessive, like he'd earned the right to it through blood and healing. You don't owe me anything, I said, needing to establish that boundary. I'm a healer. I did what healers do, that's all. Is it? He stood, crossing to where I sat, and I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. Tell me, healer, when was the last time someone came to you for help? Real help, not just herbs and bandages. I opened my mouth to answer and found I couldn't. That's what I thought. He crouched before me, bringing us eye to eye. You live out here alone, on the edge of wolf territory, because the human villages don't want you anymore, because you're broken by their standards. So you help anyone who stumbles into your garden, asking for nothing, expecting nothing, building walls so high that even gratitude can't reach you. You don't know anything about me. I know you sang healing songs over a stranger who told you to let him die. I know you used blessed thistle, which only grows in 3 places in the northern territories and costs a month's wages for a handful. I know. His hand reached out, hovering near my cheek, but not quite touching. I know you're lying to yourself about what you want. And what do I want? The challenge came out breathless. To matter, to be seen as something more than your scars. His eyes searched mine. The same thing I want. The air between us felt charged, dangerous. I should have moved away, re-established the distance between healer and patient, between human and wolf, between woman and king. Instead, I asked, why did you refuse to execute that village? The one Victor used as excuse to betray you. Damien's expression shuddered slightly, but he answered, because the tribute system is broken. We demand payment for protection from threats we create. The humans pay in grain and gold and sometimes their children, and we tell ourselves it's necessary for order. But that village, he stood abruptly, pacing to the window. They had nothing left. Crop failure, hard winter, sickness. They were starving. And my council wanted me to make an example of them anyway. So you said no. I said we'd forgive the debt, find another way. Maybe actually protect them instead of just collecting tribute. He laughed. Bitter. Victor called it weakness. Said I'd been corrupted by human sympathies, that I'd forgotten the only language lesser beings understand is fear. Lesser beings, I repeated, tasting the phrase. Is that what you think we are? He turned from the window, and in the lamplight his eyes seemed to glow. I think the universe is full of beings who call other beings lesser to justify their cruelty, and I'm tired of being one of them. Something in my chest cracked open at those words, a fissure in the walls I'd built so carefully. You can't go back alone, I said, surprising myself. If Victor's claimed your throne, if half your council supported him, then walking into Blackwood Keep will be suicide, life debt or not. I know. So what's your plan? Storm the castle? Challenge him publicly? Hope the pack suddenly remembers their loyalty? No. He moved back toward me with that predator's grace, and I rose from the chair to meet him. My plan is to show them what strength actually looks like. Not the posturing, chest beating, fear-mongering they're used to. Real strength. The kind that saves dying strangers. The kind that stands alone against the world and doesn't break. I don't understand. You, Olivia. His hands caught mine, and this time I didn't pull away. You're coming with me. Not as prisoner or obligation, but as proof. Proof that power doesn't have to come from cruelty. That the bond between wolf and human can be something other than domination. That's insane. But my voice lacked conviction. Yes. He smiled. And it transformed his face, made him look younger. Almost hopeful. But you're the woman who dragged an alpha king through the forest, because you couldn't leave a patient to suffer. Insane seems to be your specialty. I wanted to argue. Wanted to list all the 1,000 reasons why leaving my cottage, my safety, my carefully constructed isolation was a terrible idea. But standing there, hands clasped with a man who'd lived 2 centuries and still believed change was possible, I felt something I hadn't felt in 5 years. Hope. Dangerous, foolish, probably doomed, but hope nonetheless. If I do this, I said carefully, I need to understand something first. This life debt. What exactly does it mean? In wolf law, in practical terms? Damien's expression grew serious. It means I'm bound to you until the debt is repaid. I cannot rest while you're in danger. I cannot refuse any request you make of me. I cannot allow harm to come to you, even if it costs my own life. That's slavery, some would call it. Others would call it the highest honor a wolf can bestow. His thumbs traced circles on the backs of my hands, sending shivers up my arms. But there's more. A life debt, once accepted, creates a bond. Not like mating, nothing so absolute, but a connection nonetheless. I'll be able to sense when you're afraid, when you're hurt. And you'll sense the same from me. I didn't accept anything. I just healed you. You accepted the moment you refused to let me die. His eyes held mine. The moment you chose my life over your safety. That's what makes it binding, Olivia. Not wolf law or ancient magic. Choice. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the shutters. Somewhere in the forest, wolves began to howl closer than they'd been before. Damien tensed, his head cocking to listen. They're coming back. Victor's scouts, probably. He'll want to confirm I'm dead, recover my body if possible. How many? 6. Maybe 8. He released my hands, and immediately I felt the absence of his warmth. You should go. There's a root cellar? I'm not hiding while you fight half dead in my front garden. Olivia. No. I moved to my herb shelves, grabbing jars with practiced efficiency. You want me to come with you? To be proof of whatever point you're trying to make? Then we start now, together. I mixed wolfsbane with silverweed and crushed nightshade, creating a powder that would burn shifter lungs without killing. Loaded it into the small leather pouches my grandmother had used for exactly this purpose, defense against predators, human or otherwise. What are you doing? Damien asked, watching me work. Evening the odds. I handed him 3 pouches, kept 3 for myself. Throw these in their faces when they shift. It won't kill them, but it'll give them something to think about besides murder. He stared at the pouches, then at me, something like wonder crossing his face. You're magnificent, you know that? I'm practical. But heat crept up my neck at the compliment. Now help me barricade the door. If we're going to survive until morning, we're going to need to be smart about this. We worked in synchronized silence, moving furniture, securing windows, preparing for siege. And as the howls grew closer, as the wolves circled my cottage for the 2nd time in 3 days, I realized something that should have terrified me but didn't. I wasn't alone anymore. And maybe, just maybe, neither was he. Subscribe if you believe Olivia deserves allies in a world that abandoned her. Because healers who save dying kings without asking for anything in return shouldn't face wolf packs alone. Drop a comment telling Olivia what you would have done in her place, stayed safe, or risked everything for a stranger. Chapter 4. The Price of Protection. They came with the moon. 8 wolves, massive and silver gray in the darkness, their eyes reflecting the lamplight through my windows like coins tossed into a well. They didn't howl anymore, the time for announcing themselves had passed. Now they simply waited, patient as death, forming a loose circle around my cottage. Damien stood at the window, bare-chested despite the chill, his wounds still wrapped in my bandages. He'd insisted on being visible, on letting them see he was alive. A message, he'd said. A declaration. The one at the north corner. he said quietly. That's Matthias, Victor's cousin. The others are all from the Beta Line loyalists. Can you reason with them? His laugh was sharp as broken glass. Reason died when Victor put a blade in my back. Now there's only pack law. Either I'm alpha, or I'm prey. I checked my pouches one more time, the powder inside them fine as ash. You can't fight 8 wolves, not in your condition. I won't have to fight all 8. He turned from the window, and in the lamplight his eyes had gone full wolf gold and feral and burning with something primal. I just have to fight the leader. The others will fall in line or scatter. That's how it works. And if you lose, then you run. His hand caught my chin, forcing me to meet those inhuman eyes. There's a trail behind the cottage that leads to the river. Follow it downstream for a mile, then cut east toward the human settlements. Don't stop, don't look back, don't try to heal anyone else who doesn't deserve it. Damien, promise me, Olivia. The fear in his voice, raw and honest, made something in my chest constrict. This man, this king, this creature who'd lived for centuries was afraid. Not for himself, but for me. I promise. I lied. He knew it was a lie. I saw it in the way his jaw clenched, the way his hand tightened fractionally on my face. But he didn't call me on it. Instead, he leaned forward and pressed his forehead to mine, a gesture that felt ancient, sacred, like pack bonding made visible. Stay behind me, he whispered. And whatever happens, remember you gave me a reason to survive. That matters more than you know. Then he was moving, unbarring the door, stepping out into the moonlight like a king returning to his throne. I followed, because staying inside while he faced death alone was impossible. The wolves stopped circling the moment we emerged. 8 pairs of eyes fixed on Damien, and I felt the weight of their collective attention like a physical thing crushing, assessing, hungry. The largest wolf, Matthias, I assumed took 3 steps forward. He was enormous, easily the size of a small horse, his fur the color of storm clouds. When he shifted, the transformation was so fluid it looked like water flowing uphill. The man who stood in the wolf's place was younger than Damien, maybe 70 or 80 in human years, with the kind of cold handsomeness that came from never being told no. He was naked, unconcerned with modesty, comfortable in his power. My Lord Alpha, he said, and the title dripped with mockery. What a surprise. We were told you'd perished in the river. Tragic hunting accident. Victor mourned you most sincerely. I'm sure he did. Damien's voice was conversational, almost bored. Right up until he started measuring my throne. Matthias smiled, all teeth. The throne belongs to the strongest. That's pack law. If you were too weak to defend yourself against a righteous challenge. Righteous? The word cracked like a whip. Victor struck from behind during a hunt. He used silver-blessed blades. He violated every code of succession we have. There was nothing righteous about it. He did what was necessary. Matthias began circling, and the other wolves shifted restlessly. You'd gone soft, Alpha. Weak. Sparing human villages, questioning the tribute system, suggesting we find another way. He spat the words like poison. You forgot what you were, what we all are. And what's that? Predators. Matthias's eyes flicked to me, and I felt the weight of his gaze like ice down my spine. Though it seems you've remembered enough to acquire a pet, tell me, Alpha, does she know what you really are? What you've done to her kind over the centuries? Or does she think you're capable of mercy? Leave her out of this. Damien's voice dropped to a growl that raised every hair on my body. This is between you and me. Pack business. But she is pack business now, isn't she? Matthias took a step toward me, and Damien moved to intercept, placing himself between us. The scouts reported that your scent is all over her cottage, her hands on your wounds, her magic in your blood. You've bound yourself to a human, Alpha. A barren human, if the reports are true. The casual cruelty of those words, the way he said barren like it was a disease, a failing. A joke ignited something in my chest. Rage. Yes. But also something colder. Sharper. I stepped around Damien before he could stop me. You talk a lot for someone who came here with 7 friends to face 1 injured wolf, I said, my voice steady despite the thundering of my heart. That doesn't sound like a predator to me. That sounds like a coward. The clearing went silent. Matthias stared at me like I'd grown a second head. Behind him, one of the other wolves made a sound between a whine and a laugh, quickly stifled. "Olivia," Damien's voice carried a warning, but I ignored it. "You want to challenge him? Fine. Do it properly. One-on-one. No interference. Winner takes all. Isn't that pack law?" I looked at the other wolves, addressing them directly. "Or are you all content to follow someone who needs a hunting party to kill a single wounded alpha?" It was a gamble. A huge, potentially fatal gamble. But I'd read my grandmother's journals, studied wolf culture in the margins between recipes and remedies. Honor mattered to them. Strength mattered. And nothing shamed a wolf faster than being called coward by prey. Matthias's face darkened, fury rolling off him in waves. "You dare." "I dare," I said simply, "because unlike you, I actually saved your alpha's life instead of trying to take it. So yes, I think I've earned the right to call you exactly what you are." For a heartbeat, I thought he might lunge for me. Thought I might die right there in my garden, torn apart by a wolf I'd goaded into fury. Then one of the other wolves shifted, a woman this time, small and dark-haired, with scars crossing her collarbone. "She's right," the woman said, her voice carrying clearly. "This isn't how we do things. We're not scavengers picking at carrion. If Victor wants the throne, let him face the alpha properly. Witnessed. Official." Kira Matthias snarled. "No." Kira stepped forward, addressing Damien directly. "My alpha. Some of us didn't support Victor's challenge. Some of us were troubled by the methods. But he controls the keep now, and most of the council. If you want your throne back, you'll have to take it from him. Formally. At the next full moon. That's 3 weeks away," Damien said. 3 weeks to heal. 3 weeks to prove you're still strong enough to lead. Kira's eyes flicked to me, assessing. "And 3 weeks to explain why you've bound yourself to a human healer. The pack will want answers, Alpha. Good ones." Damien was quiet for a long moment, weighing options I couldn't see. Finally, he nodded. "Tell Victor I accept. Full moon challenge. Witnessed by the entire pack. Old ritual ground. Traditional weapons, only no silver, no poison." "He won't agree to those terms," Matthias growled. "Then he proves he's a coward who can only win through treachery." Damien's voice carried the weight of command, the absolute authority of a king who'd never really stopped ruling. "Tell him the human healer sends her regards. Tell him she's looking forward to watching me tear out his throat." I blinked. I'd said nothing of the sort. But the way Damien looked at me like we were co-conspirators, partners in this insane gamble, made my traitorous heart skip. Matthias looked between us, rage and confusion warring on his face. Finally, he shifted back to wolf form with a snarl that sounded like breaking bones. The other wolves followed. All except Kira. 3 weeks, Alpha, she said quietly. Use them wisely. Victor's had time to consolidate power, win loyalists. You'll need more than strength to take back your throne. You'll need proof you're still worthy of it. Then she too shifted, and the wolves melted back into the forest like smoke. We stood in silence, watching them go. My hands were shaking, delayed shock catching up with me. I'd just goaded a beta-line wolf into backing down. I'd just committed Damien to a death match with the man who'd already nearly killed him once. That was either the bravest or most foolish thing I've ever witnessed, Damien said finally, his voice strange. Probably both. I turned to face him, and found him looking at me with something I couldn't quite name. Wonder? Fear? Something else entirely? Did I just make things worse? No. He reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear with unexpected gentleness. You bought us time. And you reminded them that I'm not alone. That might matter more than you think. Or it might just make me a bigger target. Yes. He didn't sugarcoat it. But you knew that. When you stepped around me. When you called Matthias a coward to his face. When you... He stopped, something flickering across his expression. Why did you do it? Why risk yourself for someone you barely know? I thought about lying. About giving him some noble reason, some healer's oath explanation. Instead, I told the truth. Because you asked me to let you die and I refused. And I'm not going to let Victor finish what he started. Not after I put all that work into keeping you alive. It was a flippant answer, too casual for the weight of the moment. But Damien smiled anyway, a real smile this time, reaching his eyes. 3 weeks, he said. That's how long we have to prepare. To train, to turn you into someone the pack will respect, instead of dismiss. I'm not a wolf. I can't fight like you do. No. His hand found mine in the darkness. But you can do something even more dangerous. You can show them what it looks like when someone refuses to be what the world expects. When someone chooses strength over submission, courage over safety. You're asking me to be a symbol. I'm asking you to be yourself. His fingers tightened on mine. The woman who sang healing songs over a dying king. The woman who stood up to wolves without flinching. The woman who's terrified, I interrupted. Who has no idea what she's doing. Who keeps wondering if she's made the biggest mistake of her life. Good. He drew me closer, until I could feel the heat radiating from his skin. Terror means you're paying attention. Means you understand the stakes. Means you're still human enough to care whether you live or die. And you? I asked softly. Do you still care whether you live or die? He was quiet for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. Then, I do now, thanks to you. The words hung between us, intimate and dangerous. I should have pulled away, re-established boundaries, remembered all the reasons this was insane. Instead, I let him lead me back inside, into the lamplight and warmth, into 3 weeks of preparation for a battle that would decide both our fates. Outside, the forest was silent, but I knew the wolves were still out there, watching. And this time, I knew we were watching back. Chapter 5. Learning to Fight Monsters. The training began at dawn. I woke to find Damien already outside, moving through combat forms in the gray pre-dawn light. Even injured, even with bandages still wrapped around his chest, he moved with a grace that shouldn't have been possible, fluid and deadly, every motion purposeful. He saw me watching from the doorway and stopped mid-strike. You need to learn to defend yourself, he said without preamble. Not against wolves, you'll never match them in strength or speed. But against men who think you're helpless. Against situations where being underestimated is your only advantage. I know how to defend myself. I gestured to my herb garden, the carefully cultivated poisons growing alongside healing plants. I've managed alone for 5 years. Managing and thriving are different things. He crossed to me, and in the dawnlight his eyes were more amber than gold. Show me what you do when someone bigger and stronger corners you. I don't get cornered. Humor me. He moved closer, not touching but invading my space in a way that made my pulse quicken. Pretend I'm a threat. What do you do? My hand went instinctively to the small knife I kept strapped to my thigh, the one I used for harvesting herbs, and hadn't thought of as a weapon in years. I drew it, held it between us like a talisman. Damien's hand shot out, faster than I could track, and suddenly my knife was on the ground and my wrist was caught in his grip. Gentle, but inescapable. Too slow, he said. And you telegraphed your intention. I knew you'd go for the blade before you moved. Then teach me not to telegraph. I twisted, trying to break his grip using a technique I'd read about once. It didn't work. Or admit this is pointless. And let me go back to my herbs. It's not pointless. He released me, stepped back. But you're right that conventional fighting won't help you. You need to fight like prey that refuses to be caught. Dirty. Unpredictable. Using every advantage you have. I don't have any advantages. You have dozens. He began circling me slowly, assessing. You're small, harder to grab, easier to slip away. You're smart, you think 3 moves ahead while they're still planning their first. You know anatomy, you know where to strike to cause maximum damage with minimum force. And most importantly, you're human. They'll underestimate you every single time. Until they kill me for my arrogance. Until you teach them that underestimating you is fatal. He stopped circling, faced me directly. Here's the first lesson. Wolves rely on their senses. Smell, hearing, sight. All enhanced beyond human capability. That's their strength. So how do you fight someone who can track your heartbeat from across a room? I thought about it, watching him watch me. You can't hide from enhanced senses. So you don't hide. You confuse them instead. Go on. Wolfsbane mask scent. Certain herbs can accelerate heartbeat, make it sound like fear when it's really chemistry. Silver powder in the air interferes with their ability to shift smoothly. I was thinking out loud now, connecting pieces I'd never put together before. You make them doubt their own senses. Make them question what's real. Damien smiled, and it transformed his face. Now you're thinking like a survivor. Show me your garden. Really show me. Not the healing herbs, the weapons. We spent the morning cataloging every plant I'd grown, every tincture I'd brewed, every powder and paste and poison I'd learned from my grandmother's journals. Damien approached it like a military strategist, asking questions I'd never considered. How long does the wolfsbane take to work? Can you make it airborne? What's the effective radius? How much would it take to incapacitate versus kill? I don't want to kill anyone, but you need to be able to. His voice was gentle but firm. Victor won't hesitate, neither will his loyalists. If you're coming with me to Blackwood Keep, if you're standing by my side during the challenge, you need to accept that mercy might get you killed. I'm a healer, I said, but the words felt hollow even to me. You're a woman who's been forced to become something more than a healer because the world doesn't value healing. He touched my shoulder, grounding me. There's no shame in protecting yourself, Olivia. No shame in being dangerous when you need to be. We moved from herbs to hand training. Damien was patient, showing me how to use an attacker's strength against them, where to strike to buy myself seconds to escape. The hollow of the throat, the inside of the knee, the vulnerable spaces between ribs. You're not trying to win a fight, he explained, demonstrating a move that would have shattered my collarbone if he'd followed through. You're trying to create opportunities to run, to survive long enough for help to arrive, or to reach a weapon, or to... His words cut off as I swept his legs out from under him using a technique he'd just taught me. He went down hard, surprise flashing across his face before he rolled and came up laughing. Good, he said, slightly breathless. You learn fast. Again. We trained until the sun was high and my muscles screamed in protest. Then we trained more. Damien was relentless but never cruel, pushing me to my limits without breaking me. And slowly, something shifted. I began to see my body not as broken thing, barren and therefore worthless, but as a weapon I'd never learned to wield. Small didn't mean weak. Human didn't mean helpless. When we finally stopped for water, I was covered in sweat and bruises and had never felt more alive. You're going to be sore tomorrow, Damien said, watching me stretch aching muscles. I'm sore now, but I was smiling. Is this what you do? Train warriors? I train alphas. Pack leaders. The wolves who need to know how to protect their people. He paused, something complicated crossing his face. I haven't trained a human in a very long time. How long? 90 years. Maybe longer. He looked away, toward the forest. Her name was Sarah. She was a healer too, from a village on the southern border. Bandits had killed her family, burned her home. She came to me asking for protection, and He trailed off. What happened to her? She fell in love with one of my wolves. They bonded, mated. She lived a long life for a human 60 more years. Had children, grandchildren, died surrounded by family. His voice was soft with old grief. I attended her funeral. Watched my wolf grieve himself to death within a year of losing her. That's what mating bonds do to us. We're not built to survive the death of our mates. The weight of those words settled over me. 90 years ago, he'd helped a broken human woman rebuild her life. Had watched her find love, create family, die peacefully. And now here he was, training another broken human, hoping for... What? The same outcome? Something different? I won't fall in love with one of your wolves, I said, trying for levity. In case you were worried. I'm not worried about that. He turned back to me, and something in his expression made my breath catch. I'm worried about something far more complicated. What? But he didn't answer. Instead, he changed the subject with the smoothness of someone who'd had centuries of practice avoiding difficult truths. We need to discuss what happens at Blackwood Keep. The challenge itself is straightforward. Victor and I fight until one of us submits or dies. But there will be politics surrounding it. Tests of loyalty. Accusations. The pack will want to know why I've bound myself to a human. What will you tell them? The truth. That you saved my life when you could have left me to die. That the life debt is real and witnessed. That you've proven yourself worthy of respect. He moved closer, and I found myself stepping back until my shoulders hit the cottage wall. But they'll want more than that, Olivia. They'll want to know what you are to me, what role you'll play if I reclaim my throne. I don't want a role. I just want to go home. Do you? The question was soft, almost a whisper. Because I've watched you these past 3 days. Watched you come alive during training. Watched you strategize and plan, and refuse to be the helpless human they all expect. And I think maybe part of you wants what I'm offering. What are you offering? My voice came out shakier than I intended. Purpose, partnership, a chance to be more than the woman your village discarded. His hand came up, fingers barely brushing my cheek. I can't offer you forever. I'm walking into a death match with uncertain odds. But I can offer you 3 weeks where you matter. Where someone sees you as you really are, not as the world says you should be. That's not enough. No, he agreed. But it's more than you had yesterday. He was right, damn him. And that realization hurt worse than any training bruise. I need to check your wounds, I said, desperate to shift back to something concrete. Something I understood. The fever could return, and infection. Olivia. He caught my hand as I moved past him. You don't have to hide from me. I'm not going to judge you for wanting things, for being angry that the world is cruel and unfair, for wishing I was different. The words burst out before I could stop them. For hating that I'm broken in exactly the way that makes me worthless. For knowing that even if I survive the next 3 weeks, even if I help you reclaim your throne, I'll still be the barren human who can never give anyone children, can never be what I'm supposed to be. The silence that followed was absolute. Damien's hand tightened on mine, and when he spoke, his voice carried a pain I didn't understand. Do you know what I was supposed to be? He asked quietly. Before I became Alpha? Before I lived 200 years and watched empires rise and fall? I shook my head, unable to speak. Happy, he said simply. I was supposed to be happy. Find a mate, raise pups, live a simple life. But I was born with too much power, too much strength. I killed my first challenger at 15, a full-grown wolf who thought a young alpha would be easy prey. After that, there was no peace. Just an endless parade of wolves who wanted to take what I had or use me to get what they wanted. His thumb traced circles on the back of my hand, absent and soothing. I've had 3 mates over 2 centuries. The first died in childbirth along with our son. The second left me when she realized I could never give her the peaceful life she craved. The third, his voice cracked. The third was killed by wolves who wanted to hurt me, and they succeeded. I became the monster they needed me to be after that. Cold, brutal, efficient. Damien. So when you say you're broken because you can't have children, I understand. I've buried children. I've watched mates leave or die or suffer because they chose me. And sometimes I think the universe knew exactly what it was doing when it made me powerful and lonely, because anything else would have been crueler. Tears were streaming down my face now, hot and unstoppable. For him, for me, for all the ways the world shaped people into weapons, and then blamed them for having sharp edges. We're quite a pair, I whispered. Yes, he pulled me closer, and I didn't resist. The broken healer and the lonely king. It would be tragic if it wasn't so absurdly perfect. I laughed despite the tears, and felt his chest rumble with answering laughter. We stood there in the shadow of my cottage, holding each other like shipwreck survivors, and for the first time in 5 years I didn't feel alone. 3 weeks, I said into his shoulder. Then what? Then we see if broken things can be remade into something stronger. He pressed his lips to my forehead, not quite a kiss, but intimate enough to steal my breath. And if they can't, at least we'll go down fighting. It wasn't a promise of forever. Wasn't even a promise of survival. But standing there in his arms, feeling his heartbeat steady against my cheek, I realized it was enough. For now, it was enough. Hit subscribe if you think broken people deserve second chances at happiness, because Damien has buried children and lost mates for 200 years, and Olivia has been called worthless for 5. They've both earned something better than loneliness. Comment below if their pain resonates with your pain, because stories like this only matter if someone's listening. Chapter 6. The truth that breaks everything. The weeks passed in a blur of training and tension. Damien healed faster than should have been possible, even for a shifter. Within 10 days, the wounds that should have killed him were reduced to angry red scars crossing his chest like war paint. Within 2 weeks, he was moving at full strength, pushing me harder during our training sessions, teaching me not just how to survive but how to think like someone who refused to be a victim. We fell into a rhythm: dawn training in combat, midday work in the garden, cataloging weapons disguised as medicine, afternoons spent planning what would happen at the challenge, who might support Damien's return, how to navigate pack politics when half the council wanted him dead. And at night, we talked. Those were the conversations I treasured most. When the day's urgency faded and we sat by the fire, sharing stories like they were currency, he told me about the world before motors and electricity, when wolves ran freely between territories and humans still believed in magic. I told him about my grandmother, who taught me that healing was both science and art, that sometimes the best medicine was simply bearing witness to someone's pain. We didn't touch beyond training, didn't acknowledge the tension that built between us like summer lightning, visible, dangerous, waiting for the right conditions to strike. But I felt it. Gods help me, I felt it. The way his eyes followed me across the cottage, the way my breath caught when he corrected my stance, his hands warm on my waist, the way we both found excuses to stay up later, talk longer, exist in each other's orbit just a few more minutes. It was dangerous. Foolish. I knew it would end badly. I wanted it anyway. On the 18th day, 4 days before the full moon challenge, everything changed. I woke before dawn to find Damien already dressed, packing supplies into a leather satchel with methodical precision. He moved like a man preparing for battle, all business, none of the warmth I'd grown accustomed to seeing in his face. "What's wrong?" I asked, pulling a shawl around my shoulders against the morning chill. "We're leaving today." He didn't look up from his packing. "I need you to gather your essential herbs, anything you can't replace. We have a day's journey to Blackwood Keep, and I want us there with time to spare before the challenge." "That wasn't the plan. You said we'd leave the day before. Plans change." His voice was clipped, distant. "There are things I need to handle at the keep before the challenge. Political considerations I can't manage from here." Something was wrong. I could feel it in the tension of his shoulders, the careful way he avoided my eyes. "Damien." I crossed to him, placed a hand on his arm. "Talk to me. What happened?" He finally met my gaze, and what I saw there made my stomach drop. Guilt. Grief. Something that looked almost like goodbye. "Kira sent word last night, while you were sleeping." He pulled a crumpled piece of parchment from his pocket, handed it to me. "Victor is getting married, tomorrow night. The evening before the challenge. To a human woman from one of the southern villages." I scanned the letter, my healer's mind automatically noting the important details. The bride's name was Hannah. She was young, barely 20. Victor had claimed her as part of the tribute system, then decided to make the arrangement permanent. "I don't understand," I said slowly. "Why does this change our plans?" "Because the marriage is a political move." Damien took the letter back, crumpled it in his fist. "Victor is trying to prove he can be what I wasn't: strong and traditional. Proper alpha who takes what he wants, including human brides. But he's also doing something else." "What?" "He's breaking the life debt." The words hit me like cold water. "What do you mean, breaking it? That's not possible. You said the debt was binding." "That it is binding, between you and me." He finally looked at me fully, and the pain in his eyes was unbearable. "But to the pack, to Wolf Law, a life debt can be complicated. If I take a mate, if I bind myself to someone else, the life debt becomes secondary, optional. It doesn't disappear, but it loses its power." Understanding crashed over me. "You're saying you need to take a mate to protect your claim to the throne?" "No." The word came out fierce. "I'm saying Victor is trying to force my hand. By marrying publicly, he's showing the pack that he can do what I've refused to do for decades: create a stable bond, demonstrate traditional values. If I show up to the challenge with just a human healer bound by life debt, I look weak, sentimental, exactly what he's been claiming all along. So take a mate then." The words tasted like ash in my mouth. "Find a wolf from a loyal bloodline, someone politically useful." Problem solved. "Olivia." "I'm serious." I stepped back, putting distance between us before I did something stupid like beg him not to. You said yourself this was about optics, about proving you're strong enough to lead. If that means finding a proper wolf mate, then do it. I'll still honor our agreement. I'll still stand with you during the challenge, play whatever role you need me to play. The life debt doesn't change just because you've bonded someone else. That's not what I want. His voice dropped low, almost a growl. That's never been what I want. Then what do you want? The question came out sharper than intended. All my carefully controlled fear bleeding through. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're about to tell me our 3 weeks are up early. That you need to go be the alpha king and I need to go back to being the lonely healer in the woods. So just say it, Damien. Stop drawing it out. I want you to come with me as my chosen mate. The world tilted sideways. What? The word came out as barely a whisper. Not true mated. Not bonded in the way wolves bond that's sacred. Irreversible. Something I won't ask of you. He was speaking quickly now. Words tumbling over each other. But chosen, claimed. Someone I've selected to stand by my side not out of obligation but because I want you there. Because in 3 weeks you've become. He trailed off, seemingly unable to finish the thought. Because I've become what? My heart was hammering so hard I could barely hear my own voice. Essential. The word sounded torn from him. You've become essential, Olivia. And I know that's not fair. I know I'm asking you to walk into a war zone, to put yourself in more danger than you've ever faced, to pretend to be something you're not just so I can keep you close. It's selfish and wrong and I should just let you go back to your cottage and live your life in peace. But I can't. His hands came up, framing my face with desperate gentleness. I can't let you go. Not yet. Maybe not ever. And I know that makes me exactly the kind of monster Victor claims I am taking what I want, using a human for my own purposes. But God's help me, Olivia, I want you beside me when I face him. I want the pack to see what I see when I look at you. I kissed him. It wasn't planned. Wasn't thought through. I simply couldn't stand there, listening to him torture himself for wanting me when I'd spent 3 weeks wanting him just as desperately. He froze for a heartbeat, shocked. Then his arms came around me and he was kissing me back with an intensity that stole my breath. Not gentle, not careful, raw and honest, and tinged with the desperation of people who knew their time might be running out. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his forehead rested against mine. That wasn't an answer, he said, but there was something almost like hope in his voice. Yes, I whispered. I'll come with you. I'll stand by your side. I'll be whatever you need me to be. I pulled back enough to meet his eyes. But Damien, I need you to understand something. I'm not doing this because of the life debt. I'm not doing it because I think I owe you. I'm doing it because somewhere in the last 3 weeks I stopped being afraid of wanting things, and what I want is to see you take back your throne. And after. The question was barely audible. If I survive the challenge, reclaim the keep, what happens to us then? It was the question I'd been avoiding. The one that kept me awake at night, staring at the ceiling, trying not to imagine futures that couldn't exist. I don't know, I admitted, but I'd rather have 3 more weeks of not knowing with you than a lifetime of safety without you. His laugh was shaky, almost disbelieving. You're either the bravest woman I've ever met, or the most reckless. Both, I said, and kissed him again. This time when we broke apart, his expression had shifted to something more controlled, more alpha, less man. If you're doing this, there are rules, he said, slipping into the teaching voice I'd grown familiar with. Chosen mates occupy a specific position in pack hierarchy. You'll have status, protection, certain privileges, but you'll also be a target. Every wolf who wants to hurt me will see you as the easiest way to do it. I'm already a target. Not like this. His hands tightened on my waist. Before you were a human I'd bound through life debt. Unusual, but not unprecedented. Now you'll be something far more provocative. A human I've chosen over wolves. A healer I've elevated to near mate status. Some will see it as progressive. Others will see it as an insult to every wolf female who might have been selected instead. So I'll make enemies. I've had practice at that. Olivia. His voice dropped to deadly seriousness. I need you to understand what you're agreeing to. Chosen mates can be challenged. If a wolf female thinks she'd be a better match, she can issue a formal challenge not to the death but to first blood. You'd have to fight her, defend your position. I'll lose. There was no point pretending otherwise. I'm human. I can't match a wolf in combat, which is why chosen mates are allowed a champion. I would fight in your place. He paused, but it would weaken my position. Make me look like I can't choose a mate capable of defending herself. Victor will use it as ammunition. Look at the alpha who picked someone so weak she needs him to fight her battles. The trap became clear. If I agreed to be his chosen mate, I'd either have to fight wolves who could kill me easily, or force Damien to defend me in a way that undermined his authority. There's a third option, I said slowly, thinking it through. I fight, but I fight like you taught me. Dirty. Unpredictable. Using every advantage I have. You could die. I could die walking into Blackwood. Keep regardless. I pulled away, began gathering my herb supplies with quick efficiency. If I'm doing this, I'm doing it all the way. No half measures. No hiding behind you when things get dangerous. You want me to be your chosen mate, then trust me to be more than a liability. Damien watched me work. Something complicated moving across his face. Pride. Maybe. Or fear. Possibly both. 3 weeks ago, you were ready to let me die, he said quietly, and now you're ready to walk into a wolf stronghold and fight challenges for the right to stand by my side. How did that happen? I paused in my packing, considering the question honestly. 3 weeks ago, I thought I knew what my life was. Small, safe, lonely but predictable. I met his eyes across the cottage. You showed me I was wrong, that I'd been hiding from life instead of living it. That being broken doesn't mean being worthless. I went back to packing. So yes, I'm terrified. Yes. I'll probably make mistakes. But I'd rather die trying to be brave than live safely being afraid. Then we leave within the hour. Damien began gathering his own supplies, all business again. It's a day's journey to Blackwood Keep. We'll arrive after dark, which gives us some cover. I have allies there, still wolves who opposed Victor's coup but couldn't act openly. They'll shelter us until the challenge. And the wedding? We'll attend. His smile was all teeth. Victor invited me, after all. It would be rude not to congratulate him on his upcoming nuptials, especially when I'll be taking his throne the next day. There was something almost feral in his expression, the predator remembering how to hunt. It should have frightened me. Instead, it made me feel safer than I had in years. We worked in synchronized silence, packing the essentials of 3 weeks into bags we could carry. My healing supplies, weapons disguised as herbs, the few possessions I couldn't bear to leave behind, my grandmother's journals, mostly. As I sealed the last bag, I looked around my cottage. The place that had been my sanctuary, my prison, my entire world for 5 years. Now I was walking away from it, possibly forever, to follow a wolf king into danger. I should have felt grief, fear, regret. Instead, I felt free. Ready? Damien asked, standing by the door with our packs. I took one last look at the life I was leaving behind. Then I turned to face the future I was choosing. Ready, I said, and together, we walked out into the morning light. Chapter 7. The Wedding and the Wound. Blackwood Keep rose from the mountainside like a threat made stone. We'd traveled all day through dense forest, Damien setting a brutal pace that left my legs burning and lungs screaming, but I didn't complain. Couldn't afford to show weakness. Not when we were hours away from walking into enemy territory. Night had fallen by the time we reached the outer perimeter. The keep itself was massive, ancient walls of dark granite, towers that pierced the sky like claws, windows glowing with firelight that made the whole structure look alive. Hungry. Stay close, Damien murmured, his hand finding mine in the darkness. And remember, you're mine now, chosen. That means you don't bow to anyone but me. You don't apologize for existing. You walk in like you belong there because you do. Even though I'm human? Especially because you're human. His grip tightened. That's the point. I'm showing them I don't need their approval to choose who stands beside me. We approached through a servant's entrance, guided by a small woman who'd been waiting in the shadows. She was wolf, I could tell by the way she moved, too fluid and silent to be human. but her eyes were kind when they landed on me. My alpha, she said softly, dropping into a bow that Damien quickly stopped. Kira, thank you for the warning. I only wish I could have sent it sooner. She glanced at me, assessing. So this is the healer who saved you, the one they're all talking about. This is Olivia, Damien said, and something in his tone made it clear he wouldn't tolerate disrespect. My chosen mate. Kira's eyes widened fractionally, but she recovered quickly. Then welcome, Olivia. You'll need courage for what's coming, but I suspect you have plenty of that already. She gestured for us to follow. The wedding is in the Great Hall. Victor made it a public spectacle, invited every pack leader within 3 territories. He's showing off, proving he can attract allies while you were indisposed. How many wolves? Damien asked as we moved through narrow corridors. 200, maybe more. All loyal to Victor, or at least willing to see which way the wind blows before committing. She paused at a corner, listening. There's been talk. Some wolves aren't happy with how Victor took power, but they're afraid to speak openly. If you're going to reclaim your throne, you'll need to give them reason to remember why they followed you in the first place. We emerged into a gallery overlooking the Great Hall, and my breath caught. The space was enormous, easily the size of my entire cottage multiplied by 20. Hundreds of wolves filled the hall, some in human form, others shifted partially, a display of power and dominance. At the center, on a raised dais, stood Victor. He was handsome in the brutal way of predators, all sharp angles and cold eyes. Younger than Damien, maybe 150, with the kind of confidence that came from never being told no. And beside him, looking tiny and terrified in a white dress, stood Hannah. She couldn't have been more than 20. Blonde hair, pale skin, eyes that darted around the room like a trapped animal looking for escape. Her hands trembled as Victor took one, displaying her to the assembled wolves like a prize he'd won. She's terrified, I whispered. She should be, Kira said grimly. Victor doesn't want a mate. He wants a possession. Something to prove he can take whatever he wants from the human villages. Rage burned in my chest. This girl, barely more than a child, being paraded and claimed by a monster who'd betrayed his own alpha. Used as a political tool in games she couldn't understand. We're stopping this, I said. Damien looked at me sharply. Olivia, I mean it. After the challenge, after you've taken back your throne, we're stopping this. No more tribute brides, no more humans treated as property. Something fierce and proud flashed in his eyes. After the challenge, he agreed. But for now, we watch. And we wait for the right moment. The ceremony began with rituals I didn't understand, wolf customs passed down through centuries. Victor spoke words in a language that sounded like growling, and Hannah repeated them with a voice so small I barely heard it. When the binding was complete, when Victor had claimed her officially before witnesses, the hall erupted in howls. Celebration mixed with dominance displays, wolves asserting hierarchy through sound and movement. That's when Damien stepped forward. The gallery where we'd been hiding gave way to a grand staircase leading down to the main floor. Damien descended slowly, each step measured and deliberate, and one by one the wolves fell silent. By the time he reached the bottom, you could have heard a pin drop. Victor's face went through a dozen emotions: shock, rage, fear, calculation, before settling on cold fury. Well, he said, his voice carrying across the hall. The dead walk among us. How biblical. Not dead, Damien said calmly. Just delayed. But I'm here now, Victor. And I believe congratulations are in order. A wedding. How? Traditional of you. More traditional than binding yourself to a human through life debt. Victor's eyes found me on the stairs behind Damien, and his smile turned cruel. Though I see you've brought your pet healer. Tell me, does she sit at your feet, or do you actually let her sleep in a proper bed? The insult was calculated to provoke. I felt Damien tense, knew he wanted to lunge forward, tear out Victor's throat right there. Instead, I descended the remaining stairs and stood beside Damien, my head high. I'm not his pet, I said clearly. I'm his chosen mate. Which means I have the right to address you directly, doesn't it? Or have you changed pack law along with everything else? Shocked silence. Then murmurs rippling through the crowd. Victor's smile disappeared. Chosen mate. How convenient. Tell me, Alpha. He spat the title like poison. Does she know what that means? That any wolf female who objects can challenge her claim? That you've essentially painted a target on her back? I'm aware, I said before Damien could respond. And I accept any challenges that come. Or are you afraid your wolves might lose to a human? More murmurs, some laughs quickly stifled. Victor's face darkened. You have courage, I'll give you that. Foolish courage, but courage nonetheless. He turned to address the assembled wolves. You see what he's become? So desperate for relevance he binds himself to humans. First through debt, now through mockery of mate bonds. This is your alpha weak, compromised, more concerned with human feelings than wolf strength. I see an alpha who shows mercy instead of cruelty. A voice called from the crowd. One of the older wolves, scarred and gray. I see an alpha who remembers we're supposed to protect, not just dominate. Protect? Victor laughed. From what? Ourselves? We're predators, not shepherds. The alpha has forgotten that. He's been corrupted by human sympathies. And if we follow him, he'll lead us to ruin. Then let pack law decide, Damien said, his voice cutting through the argument. Tomorrow night, full moon challenge. You and me, Victor. Winner takes the throne. Unless you're afraid to face me when I'm not bleeding out in a river. The hall erupted. Shouts of agreement, disagreement, wolves taking sides. Victor raised a hand for silence. I accept. Gladly. It'll be my pleasure to finish what I started. His eyes flicked to me. And after I kill him, I'll deal with his human pet. Maybe make her a servant. Maybe something worse. We'll see how brave she is when there's no alpha to hide behind. Heat flared beside me, Damien's power rising, dangerous and barely controlled. I grabbed his hand, squeezed hard. Not here, I whispered. Not like this. Save it for tomorrow. He looked at me, something wild in his eyes. Then slowly, with visible effort, he pulled himself back from the edge. Tomorrow, he agreed, still looking at me. When it matters. We turned to leave together, and I felt hundreds of eyes tracking our movement. Some hostile, some curious, some like Kira's hopeful. As we reached the stairs, a wolf stepped into our path. Female, beautiful in the way of predators, with auburn hair and eyes like amber. I challenge your claim, she said to me, voice ringing clear. As is my right. You're not worthy to stand beside the alpha. You're human. Weak. Barren. I challenge you to prove otherwise. My heart stopped. This was it, the first test. Damien started to step forward. But I held him back. I accept, I said, proud my voice didn't shake. Name your terms. First blood. Tomorrow morning, before the alpha's challenge. Traditional combat, no weapons. She smiled, showing teeth. Unless you'd prefer to withdraw. Admit you're out of your depth? Every instinct screamed at me to say yes. To withdraw, accept defeat. Hide behind Damien like Victor had accused. Instead, I smiled back. Tomorrow morning, I agreed. I look forward to showing you what human weakness actually looks like. Chapter 8. Blood, Battle, and Broken Curses. Dawn came too quickly. I'd spent the night in a small room Kira had secured for us, unable to sleep, running through every fighting technique Damien had taught me. My challenger's name was Sarah Beta Bloodline, trained warrior, someone who'd probably been killing things since before I was born. I was going to lose. The only question was how badly. You don't have to do this, Damien said for the 10th time, watching me prepare. I can fight as your champion. No one would blame you. Everyone would blame me. I secured my hair back, checked the small knife hidden in my boot not for the fight, but for after, if I survived long enough to need healing. And they'd be right. If I can't defend my own claim, I have no business making it. Olivia. No. I turned to face him. You taught me to fight like prey that refuses to be caught. To use every advantage I have. To make them underestimate me. And then punish them for it. So let me do that. Let me try. His jaw clenched, but he nodded. Then remember, you're not trying to win. You're trying to survive long enough to draw first blood. One cut. Anywhere on her body. That's all you need. One cut. I repeated. against a wolf who can move faster than I can see and hit harder than a blacksmith's hammer. Simple. You're not going to outfight her. You're going to outthink her. He pulled me close, pressed his forehead to mine. She expects you to be afraid, to run, to make mistakes. So don't give her what she expects. Give her something else entirely. The challenge took place in the keep's training yard, a large circle of packed earth surrounded by hundreds of wolves. They'd come to watch the human fail, to see Victor's narrative proven right, that Damien had chosen weakness over strength. I walked into the circle alone, wearing simple clothes that wouldn't restrict movement. No armor, no protection, just me and the knife I couldn't use, and the herbs I'd hidden in my sleeves. Sierra was already waiting, stripped down to training leathers, muscles rippling under scarred skin. She looked like violence made flesh. Last chance to withdraw, she said almost kindly. I don't want to kill you. Just prove you're not worthy. I appreciate the consideration, I said, but I think I'll take my chances. The referee, one of the older wolves who'd spoken in Damien's favor, raised his hand. Traditional challenge. First blood wins. No fatal blows. No shifting. Begin. Sarah moved. 1 second she was across the circle. The next she was on me, fist driving toward my face with enough force to shatter bone. I dropped and rolled, barely avoiding the strike, came up with wolfsbane powder in my hand and threw it in her face. She recoiled, coughing, eyes watering. The crowd gasped. I'd broken no rules, used no weapons, but it was unexpected, dishonorable, some would say. I didn't care. While she was disoriented, I went for her legs, sweeping them with a move Damien had drilled into me 100 times. She went down hard, and I was on her instantly, trying for the throat, the easiest place to draw blood. She caught my wrist, twisted, and suddenly I was airborne. I hit the ground 10 feet away, the impact driving the air from my lungs. Pain exploded through my ribs. Clever, Sarah said, her voice rough from the wolfsbane. But tricks only work once. She came at me again, and this time there was no mercy in her eyes. I scrambled backward, desperate, searching for any advantage. My hand found dirt, and I threw it, aiming for her eyes again. She batted it aside like nothing, her fist connected with my shoulder, spinning me around. Then her knee hit my stomach and I was on the ground, gasping, tasting blood. The crowd was howling now. Some in excitement, some in disappointment. I heard Victor's laugh above it all, cruel and satisfied. Sarah stood over me, breathing hard. Yield, she said. You fought well for a human. There's no shame in admitting defeat. I looked up at her through the blood and dirt, and thought about everything that had led to this moment. 5 years of isolation, 3 weeks of training, a lifetime of being told I wasn't enough. And I realized something. I wasn't trying to win. I was trying to survive. To prove I could take the hit and get back up. But maybe that wasn't enough anymore. No, I gasped, and drove my palm upward into her nose. I'd aimed for the soft cartilage, the place Damien said would make anyone's eyes water involuntarily. It worked. Blood exploded from Sierra's nose, and she staggered back, shocked. First blood. I'd drawn first blood. The yard went silent, then erupted. Some wolves were cheering, others shouting in outrage. Sierra stood frozen, hand to her bleeding nose, staring at me like I'd performed a miracle. The referee stepped forward. First blood to the challenger, the human's claim stands. I collapsed back to the ground, every inch of my body screaming. I'd won. Somehow, impossibly, I'd won. Damien was there instantly, pulling me up, his hands checking for injuries. Broken ribs, he muttered. Possibly concussion. You reckless, magnificent. I won, I said, half delirious with pain and triumph. I actually won. You did. He lifted me easily, carried me from the circle. Now let's get you healed before my challenge. Because I need you there, Olivia. I need you to see me take back my throne. The hours between my challenge and Damien's passed in a blur of healing and preparation. Kira brought supplies, helped me wrap my ribs, gave me something for the pain that made the world fuzzy at the edges. When the full moon rose, we returned to the yard. This time the entire pack was assembled, 200 wolves, all watching as Damien and Victor faced each other in the circle. Traditional rules, Victor said, stripping off his shirt to reveal muscles built for killing. No shifting. Claws and teeth only. Fight until one of us submits or dies. I accept, Damien said calmly. Though I should warn you, I'm not the bleeding half-dead wolf you left in that river. I've had 3 weeks to heal. 3 weeks to remember why I became alpha in the first place. Because you were born strongest. Victor sneered. Not because you deserved it. No. Damien's eyes found mine in the crowd. Because I learned that real strength isn't about domination. It's about choosing to protect instead of harm. To build instead of destroy. To see value in things others dismiss as worthless. Weakness. Victor spat. We'll see. They came together like thunder. I'd never seen wolves fight before. Not really fight. Not like this. It was brutal and beautiful and terrifying, each blow powerful enough to kill a human instantly. They moved too fast to track, claws extending from fingertips, teeth elongating into fangs. Victor was vicious, going for killing strikes immediately. But Damien was patient, defensive, letting Victor tire himself with aggressive attacks. He's waiting, Kira whispered beside me, letting Victor burn through his energy. Smart. The fight raged for what felt like hours but was probably minutes. Both were bleeding now, both slowing. Victor's attacks growing desperate, Damien's defenses weakening. Then Victor made a mistake, overextended on a strike, left his side exposed. Damien took it, drove his claws into Victor's ribs, tore sideways. Victor screamed, went down. Damien stood over him, claws at his throat. Submit. Never. Victor gasped. Kill me or I'll come for you again. I'll never stop. I know, Damien said sadly. That's why I can't let you live. His claws tore through Victor's throat in one clean motion. The beta died instantly, blood pooling in the dirt. Silence fell over the assembled wolves. Then, slowly, one by one, they began to bow. My alpha, Kira said, dropping to one knee. Welcome home. The words rippled through the crowd. My alpha. My alpha. Welcome home. Damien stood in the center of the circle, covered in blood, victorious. And when his eyes found mine, when he crossed to where I stood and pulled me against him despite my broken ribs, I felt something shift in the world. It's over, he whispered into my hair. You're safe now. We're both safe. But even as he said it, even as the pack celebrated around us, I knew it wasn't quite true. The challenge was over. The throne was his again. But everything else, what we were to each other, what happened next, whether broken things could truly be remade, that story was just beginning.